Document. Part 6. The journey through space was grueling. But the crew of the Odyssey had grown accustomed to the rhythm of their days. They woke early, performed routine checks on the ship's systems, and spent hours analyzing data for any sign of the Zetherians or the Krill. At night, they gathered in the cramped common area to share meals and stories, finding comfort in each other's company. The vast emptiness outside their windows reminded them of how small they were, yet it also reinforced their determination to succeed. Weeks passed, and the coordinates Karen had decoded grew closer with each passing day. But as they approached, the destination tension began to build. None of them knew what awaited them at the end of their journey. Would the Zetherians welcome them as allies? Or would they see humanity as another threat to avoid? One evening, as Sarah adjusted the ship's course to navigate around a cluster of asteroids, an alarm blared suddenly, piercing the quiet hum of the engines. Everyone rushed to the cockpit, their faces tight with worry. "What's happening?" Alex asked, his voice sharp. "It's a proximity alert," Sarah replied, her hands flying over the controls. "Something's out there, big." On the monitor, a shadow loomed in the distance. It was massive, its shape jagged and irregular, like a floating mountain of debris. As the Odyssey drew nearer, details became clearer. The object wasn't natural, it was artificial, constructed from scraps of metal and twisted wreckage. Towering spires jutted outward at odd angles, and faint lights flickered deep within its core. "That's no asteroid," Maria whispered, her eyes wide. "It's a station, or what's left of one." Karen leaned forward, studying the readings on her laptop. "This matches part of the alien message. These could be the ruins of the Zetherian civilization." Jack swallowed hard. "If that's true, then we found them but too late." Alex shook his head. "Not necessarily. Ruins mean survivors might still be nearby. We need to investigate." Sarah frowned, glancing at the ship's fuel gauge. "We don't have much time before we'll need to refuel. If we go in, we'd better make it quick." After a brief discussion, the group decided to dock with the structure. Using the ship's grappling hooks, they secured the Odyssey to the outer hull and prepared to disembark. Each member suited up in makeshift space gear, double-checking their oxygen tanks and communication devices. Armed with tools and flashlights, they stepped onto the alien surface, their boots clanging against the cold metal. The interior of the station was eerily silent. Dust coated every surface, and the air smelled stale, though breathable. Strange symbols covered the walls, glowing faintly in shades of blue and green. Karen paused to examine them, her heart racing as she recognized patterns similar to those in the alien message. "This is definitely Zetherian," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. "We're in the right place." As they moved deeper into the station, evidence of destruction surrounded them. Walls were scorched, furniture reduced to splinters, and entire sections collapsed under the weight of time. In one chamber, they found skeletal remains, fragile, insectoid bodies that matched Karen's descriptions of the Zetherians. Jack knelt beside one, his flashlight illuminating delicate wings fused to its back. "They didn't stand a chance," he murmured. Maria placed a hand on his shoulder. "Maybe not all of them died here. Some must have escaped." Her words gave them hope, driving them onward. Eventually, they reached a large room filled with strange machinery. Panels blinked with weak lights, and wires hung loose from broken consoles. At the center stood a pedestal, its surface etched with intricate designs. On top rested a glowing orb, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. "What is that?" Ryan asked, stepping closer. Karen hesitated, her instincts warning her to tread carefully. "Think it's some kind of interface, a way to communicate." Before anyone could stop him, Ryan reached out and touched the orb. Instantly, the room came alive. Lights flared, machines whirred, and a holographic image materialized above the pedestal. It depicted a towering insectoid figure, its many legs clicking together as it spoke in a melodic language, though incomprehensible at first. Karen quickly realized it was repeating phrases from the original SOS message. "They recorded this," she said, her voice filled with awe. It's a distress beacon one meant to guide survivors here. Alex crossed his arms, his expression grim. Survivors or scavengers, whoever set this up wanted others to find it. Just then, a low rumble echoed through the station. Floor vibrated beneath their feet and dust rained down from the ceiling. "What was that?" Doc asked, gripping his medical kit tightly. Sarah glanced at her scanner. "Structural instability. This place isn't safe anymore. We need to leave," Alex ordered, already heading for the exit. Now, as they retraced their steps, the tremors grew stronger, threatening to collapse the station entirely. Debris fell from the ceiling, forcing them to dodge and weave through narrow corridors. When they finally reached the airlock, they found the Odyssey partially detached, its grappling hook straining under the stress. "Hold on," Sarah shouted, climbing aboard and firing the engines. The ship lurched free just as the station crumbled behind them, swallowed by the void of space. Breathing heavily, the crew regrouped in the cockpit, shaken but alive. "That was too close," Jack muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. Karen nodded, clutching the note she'd taken during their exploration. "But we learned something important. The Zetharians aren't going to hide in, and they left clues for us to follow." Over the next few days, Karen analyzed the data they'd collected, piecing together new insights about the Zetharians' plight. From the ruins, she deduced that the species had once been prosperous, thriving across multiple planets before the Krill's relentless attacks forced them into exile. Their survival depended on secrecy, moving constantly to evade detection. The coordinates they'd followed weren't just random. They pointed to a network of hidden sanctuaries where the Zetharians sought refuge. "We're getting closer," Karen announced one morning, her voice brimming with optimism. "The next set of coordinates should lead us directly to them." Ryan grinned, leaning back in his chair. "Then let's not keep them waiting." The final leg of their journey took them to a barren moon orbiting a dying star. Its surface was desolate, marked by deep craters and jagged cliffs. As the Odyssey descended, they spotted signs of life-faint energy signatures emanating from underground caverns. Sarah guided the ship toward the largest signal, landing gently on a rocky plateau. Outside, the landscape was bleak, but strangely beautiful. Stars glittered overhead, unobscured by atmosphere, while the distant sun cast a dim red glow across the terrain. Clutching their weapons and supplies, the crew ventured into a nearby cave. Following a narrow tunnel that sloped downward, after what felt like hours, they emerged into a vast chamber illuminated by bioluminescent plants clinging to the walls. In the center stood a group of creatures unlike anything they'd ever seen. Tall and slender, with translucent exoskeletons and multifaceted eyes, the Zetharians regarded them with a mixture of curiosity and caution. For a moment, no one moved. Then Karen stepped forward, holding up her hands in a gesture of peace. "Dave, mean no harm," she said slowly, using the phrases she'd pieced together from the alien message. "We received your call for help." The Zetharians exchanged glances, their antennae twitching in response. One of them, larger than the rest, approached cautiously. Its voice resonated in their minds, soft yet commanding. "You are human, yes," Karen replied, her heart pounding. "We're from Earth. We want to help you fight the Krill." The creature paused, tilting its head as if weighing her words. Finally, it spoke again. "You are brave to come so far, but bravery alone will not save you or us." Alex stepped forward, his tone earnest. "We may not have your technology, but we're resourceful. Together, we can find a way to defeat them." The Zetharian leader hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Very well, you shall stay with us for now, but know this. The Krill do not forgive. They do not forget. By aiding us, you risk everything." Ryan smiled grimly. "Risking everything is what we do best." As the Zetharians led them deeper into their sanctuary, the crew exchanged hopeful glances. They had found Alazan, perhaps, a fighting chance. But they also knew the road ahead would be fraught with danger. The Krill wouldn't stop until every last trace of resistance was wiped out. For now, though they allowed themselves a moment of relief. Against all odds, they had succeeded in reaching the Zetharians. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. Document Part 5. The decision to build a spaceship was both thrilling and terrifying. It was the kind of plan that sounded impossible until you broke it down into smaller steps. Ryan's confidence inspired the group, but they all knew the challenges ahead were immense. They had no blueprints, no space agency backing them, and no guarantee their makeshift vessel would even survive liftoff. Yet, despite the odds, they couldn't afford to hesitate. Every day the krill remained unchecked was another day Earth moved closer to total destruction. Ryan took charge of gathering resources, leveraging his connections in the tech industry to secure funding and materials. He reached out to former colleagues, old business partners, and anyone else who might help, always careful not to reveal too much about their ultimate goal. It's for experimental research, he told them with a wink. Most people didn't. Ask questions. Money talked, and Ryan had plenty of it. Meanwhile, Jack focused on designing the ship. Using scraps of knowledge from documentaries, science fiction novels, and online forums, he sketched rough plans on a whiteboard in the facility's main lab. The design wasn't elegant. It looked more like a patchwork quilt than a sleek spacecraft. It was functional, or at least he hoped it would be. We'll need engines powerful enough to escape Earth's gravity, Jack explained during one brainstorming session. And shielding to protect us from radiation and debris once we're in space. Maria nodded thoughtfully. What about life support? Can't exactly open the windows if we run out of air. Karen chimed in, her voice steady, despite the enormity of the task. I've been studying the alien message again. There are references to propulsion systems. Maybe we can reverse engineer some of their technology. Alex raised an eyebrow. Reverse engineer? With what tools? We'll improvise, Karen said firmly. We don't have time to wait for perfect solutions. Building the ship became a community effort. Word spread among resistance groups about the project, and volunteers poured in from across the country. Some were engineers or mechanics. Others were farmers, teachers, or students. What they lacked in expertise, they made up for in determination. Together, they scavenged parts from abandoned factories, junkyards, and even crashed krill drones. Each piece brought them one step closer to their goal. Sarah Dawson, a fearless pilot who had lost her family in the initial attacks, joined the team after hearing about their mission. She had spent years flying cargo planes for private companies, and her skills proved invaluable. If you're building a spaceship, you're going to need someone to fly it, she said with a grin. Might as well be me. Daniel Harper, known simply as Doc because of his medical background, also joined the crew. A soft-spoken man in his 50s, Doc had seen enough death during the invasion to know how fragile life could be. Volunteered to oversee health and safety aboard the ship, ensuring everyone stayed alive long enough to reach their destination. With Sarah and Doc on board, the team felt more complete. They weren't just a group of amateurs anymore. They were a crew, united by a common purpose. As construction progressed, tensions ran high. Long hours in cramped quarters led to arguments over everything from engineering designs to meal rotations. Supplies dwindled, forcing them to ration food and water. The constant threat of discovery loomed over every decision, keeping everyone on edge. Yet through it all, they pushed forward, driven by the belief that failure wasn't an option. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jack stood outside the facility, staring at the half-finished ship. Its frame gleamed faintly in the moonlight, a testament to months of hard work. Ryan approached him, holding 2 cups of coffee. You okay? Ryan asked, handing one of the cups to Jack. Jack sighed, taking a sip before responding. I keep thinking about how much is riding on this. If we screw up, it's not just us who pay the price. It's everyone. Ryan nodded, his usual bravado, tempered by the weight of responsibility. Yeah, I get that. But look at what we've done so far. We started with nothing, a bunch of strangers in a warehouse, and now we've got a spaceship. That's something. Right, it's something, Jack admitted, but it's not enough. Not yet. Finally, after months of relentless effort, the ship was ready, or as ready as it would ever be. They named it Odyssey, a nod to humanity's journey into the unknown. Standing before the vessel on its launch day, the team couldn't help but feel a mix of pride and fear. The ship was crude compared to anything the Krill might possess, but it was theirs. Built with blood, sweat, and sheer willpower. Inside the cockpit, Sarah ran final checks on the controls, while Doc double-checked the life support systems. Maria and Alex worked together to load supplies, packing essentials like food, medicine, and spare parts. Karen stayed glued to her laptop, monitoring communication channels in case the Zitherians are worse. The Krill picked up their signal. "Everyone. Strapped in?" Sarah called out, her voice cutting through the tension. One by one, the team confirmed they were ready. Jack settled into the co-pilot's seat beside Sarah, gripping the armrests tightly. This was at the moment they'd been working toward for months. As the countdown began, he closed his eyes and took a deep breath. 3, 2, 1. Ignition. The engines roared to life, shaking the ground beneath them. Flames erupted from the thrusters as the ship lifted off, climbing higher and higher into the sky. For a brief moment, the world seemed impossibly small and insignificant speck against the vastness of space. Then they broke through the atmosphere, so that everything changed. Space was unlike anything they'd imagined. Silent and infinite. It stretched out in every direction, dotted with stars that burned cold and distant. From their vantage point, Earth looked breathtakingly beautiful, blue and green marble suspended in the void. But there was no time to admire the view. Ahead of them lay countless dangers. Starting with the coordinates Karen had decoded. According to her calculations, the Zitherians' location was still weeks away. In the meantime, they needed to avoid detection by the Krill, who likely had patrols scattered throughout the galaxy. To minimize risk, Sarah plotted a zigzag course, weaving between asteroids and other celestial bodies whenever possible. It was slow going, but safer than traveling in a straight line. Days turned into weeks as they ventured deeper into space. Life aboard the Odyssey was cramped and monotonous, punctuated by moments of panic when alarms blared or equipment malfunctioned. Doc patched up minor injuries, while Maria tinkered endlessly with the ship's systems, making adjustments on the fly. Karen spent most of her time analyzing data, searching for any sign of the Zitherians or the Krill. Despite the hardships, the crew grew closer. They shared stories, played games to pass the time, and supported each other through bouts of homesickness. Even Ryan, who had always seemed larger than life, revealed a softer side, cracking jokes to lighten the mood during tense moments. One night, as the ship drifted silently through the darkness, Jack sat alone in the observation deck, gazing at the stars. He thought about Earth afields of Pine Ridge, the faces of friends and family left behind. Would they ever see home again? Or was this journey a one-way trip? Before he could dwell too long on those thoughts, Karen joined him, carrying a thermos of hot tea. "Mind if I join you?" she asked softly. Jack shook his head, scooting over to make room. They sat in silence for a while, watching the universe unfold before them. Finally, Karen spoke. "Do you think we'll find them, the Zitherians?" "I don't know," Jack admitted. "But I think we have to believe we will. Otherwise, why are we here?" Karen smiled faintly, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "You're right. Believing is half the battle." As they sipped their tea, the Odyssey continued its journey, carrying Earth's last hope into the great unknown. Whatever awaited them, they were ready, or as ready as they could be. Document. Part 4. The days that followed the Krill's attack felt like a blur of chaos and despair. News of the invasion spread across the globe, sparking panic on an unprecedented scale. Cities were evacuated as people fled to rural areas, hoping to escape the alien ships that now patrolled the skies. Governments issued conflicting statements, some urging calm while others declared martial law. Military forces launched futile counterattacks, their weapons proving useless against the Krill's advanced technology. The world watched in horror as entire nations fell under the invaders' shadow. Amid the turmoil, Jack, Karen, Alex, Maria, and Ryan worked tirelessly to share what they knew. They reached out to journalists, scientists, and anyone who might listen. Explaining the origins of the alien message and the Krill's arrival. At first, their warnings were met with skepticism. Many dismissed them as conspiracy theorists or opportunists trying to profit from fear. But as evidence mounted videos of the Krill ships, eyewitness accounts of their attacks, their story gained traction. Social media became a battleground of its own. Some users mocked the group, accusing them of fabricating the alien signal to gain attention. Others praised them as heroes, spreading their message far and wide. Within days, hashtags like #AlienSignal and #EarthUnites began trending worldwide. People started organizing grassroots efforts, sharing tips on survival and resistance. Living rooms, basements, and community centers. Ordinary citizens came together to prepare for whatever came next. Despite the growing support, the group faced immense challenges. The Krill's presence loomed over every decision they made. Their ships hovered ominously in the atmosphere, scanning cities and countryside alike. Smaller drones patrolled the skies, targeting anything that moved. It was clear the aliens weren't just observing, they were searching for something. Or someone. "We need to stay hidden," Alex said during one tense meeting. "If they find us, we're dead." Karen nodded, her hands trembling as she clutched a map of Idaho. "But we can't just disappear. We have to keep working. If we stop now, we lose everything." Maria suggested relocating to a more remote location. "The Krill won't waste resources hunting us if they think we're insignificant." "Let's go somewhere off the grid," Ryan agreed. "I know. A place, an old research facility in the mountains. It's isolated, secure, and stocked with supplies. We can regroup there." After a heated debate, the group decided to move. Only what they could carry, they left the warehouse behind, driving through deserted roads under the cover of darkness. The journey was nerve-wracking. Every sound outside the car made them jump, convinced the Krill were closing in. When they finally reached the facility, a sprawling compound nestled deep in the woods, they breathed a collective sigh of relief. The facility proved to be exactly what they needed. Its thick concrete walls provided protection from both the elements and potential surveillance. Inside, they found labs, sleeping quarters, and even a small generator to power their equipment. For the first time since the invasion began, they felt a glimmer of hope. Their first priority was decoding the rest of the alien message. Karen set up shop in one of the labs, surrounded by laptops and notebooks. She spent hours analyzing the fragments she'd already translated, piecing together new insights about the Zithians, the species that had sent the SOS. According to the message, the Zithirians were insectoid beings, highly intelligent but physically fragile. They had once thrived in a vast interstellar empire, but centuries of war with the Krill had reduced them to scattered survivors. They're desperate. Karen explained to the others. They've been running for so long, they don't know how to fight anymore. That's why they sent the signal to find allies. Jack frowned. "Do you think they'll help us?" "I mean, we're not exactly advanced compared to them." "It's possible," Maria said thoughtfully. "Survival breeds cooperation. If we can prove we're worth saving, maybe they'll share their knowledge, or at least point us in the right direction." Alex wasn't convinced. "Even if we contact them, it'll take time. We need a plan to hold off the Krill until then." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "And how do you suggest we do that?" "We're outnumbered, outgunned, and outmatched." Alex leaned forward, his voice steady. "We adapt. Humans have always been good at turning disadvantages into strengths. We use guerrilla tactics, hidden drone attacks, sabotage, anything to slow them down. We make ourselves unpredictable." Maria nodded. "We study their weaknesses. Every species has vulnerabilities. If we can figure out what theirs are, we might stand a chance." While Karen continued decoding the message, the others focused on gathering intelligence. Using scavenged parts, Jack built makeshift drones to spy on the Krill ships. Flying low and avoiding detection, the drones captured footage of the aliens' operations. What they saw was both terrifying and enlightening. The Krill were massive, hulking creatures encased in sleek armor. Their movements were precise, almost mechanical, suggesting they relied heavily on technology rather than raw instinct. Their ships emitted powerful energy fields, making direct assaults nearly impossible. But there were cracks in their defenses. The drones noticed gaps in the energy shields when the ships repositioned, as well as moments when the krill seemed disoriented by Earth's magnetic field. "These are patterns," Alex said, pointing to the footage. "They're predictable. If we strike when they're vulnerable, we can cause real damage." Ryan grinned despite himself. "Now you're talking. Let's hit him where it hurts." Their first operation was modest but effective. Using stolen explosives and homemade devices, the group targeted a krill supply depot hidden in the desert. Under the cover of night, they planted charges around the perimeter and detonated them remotely. The explosion lit up the sky, sending shockwaves through the surrounding area. Though the attack didn't destroy the depot completely, it disrupted the krill's operations and boosted morale among human resistance groups. Word of their success spread quickly, inspiring others to take action. Across the globe, small teams of civilians began launching similar raids, striking at krill outposts and supply lines. These acts of defiance were minor compared to the aliens' overwhelming power, but they served a greater purpose, reminding humanity that it still had a fighting spirit. As weeks turned into months, the group grew closer, bound by shared struggles and victories. They argued, laughed, and supported each other through sleepless nights and endless setbacks. Each day brought new challenges, but also new opportunities to learn and adapt. One evening, as they sat around a table eating canned food, Karen looked up from her notes with a triumphant smile. "I think I've cracked it," she said. "The message includes coordinates, not just where the Zytharians are hiding, but where the krill's main fleet is located." The room fell silent as the weight of her words sank in. Finding the Zytharians meant finding potential allies. But locating the krill's fleet offered something else entirely, a chance to strike back. Alex broke the silence. "If we can get to those coordinates, we might be able to cripple their forces before they fully mobilize." "It's risky. We don't have the tech to travel that far. Even if we did, we'd be walking straight into enemy territory." Ryan smirked. "Then we'll build it. With enough resources and a little ingenuity, we can create a ship capable of reaching them." Maria crossed her arms, skeptical but intrigued. "Building a spaceship isn't exactly easy. Do we even have the materials?" "We'll find them," Ryan replied confidently. "This planet may be primitive, but it's full of clever people. Together, we can pull it off." The idea was audacious, bordering on insane. But as the group discussed the logistics, they realized it wasn't impossible. Humanity had achieved incredible feats before, often against all odds. Why should this be any different? By morning, they had a plan. It would take time, effort, and sacrifices, but they were determined to see it through. For the first time since the invasion began, they felt a sense of purpose, not just to survive, but to fight back. As dawn broke over the mountains, casting golden light across the forest, Jack stepped outside and gazed at the horizon. The world was broken, scarred by fire and fear. But amidst the ruins, something remarkable was taking shape. A fragile yet unyielding resolve to protect what remained. "We're not done yet," he murmured to himself. "Not by a long shot." Document, Part 3. The days following the transmission of their message were filled with a strange mix of anticipation and dread. The group had done everything they could to ensure their reply reached the right audience, but the uncertainty gnawed at them. Had they sent it correctly? Would the aliens even understand it? And what if the hunters, the ones mentioned in the original distress call, found out about Earth because of their response? Back in the warehouse, the team tried to stay busy. Jack spent hours monitoring his equipment, hoping for some kind of acknowledgement from the aliens who had sent the SOS. Karen pored over her notes, double-checking every detail of the message they'd transmitted. Alex and Maria worked on contingency plans, brainstorming ways to defend Earth if the worst happened. Ryan, ever the optimist, kept reminding them that they'd taken the first step towards something incredible. "We're pioneers," he said during one meeting. "This is humanity's moment to shine." But shining wasn't easy when you didn't know what or who you were dealing with. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted The sky in fiery hues. Jack noticed something unusual on his monitors. At first, he thought it was just interference, a glitch in the system, or a passing satellite. But as he adjusted the dials, the readings became clearer. Something massive was entering Earth's atmosphere. "Guys," Jack called out, his voice rising with panic. "You need to see this." The others rushed over, crowding around his workstation. On the screen, jagged lines pulsed erratically, indicating multiple objects descending rapidly. Their size and speed suggested they weren't natural phenomena like meteors. Whatever they were too big and moving too fast to be ordinary. "It's them," Karen whispered, her face pale. "They've come." Alex grabbed his phone and dialed emergency services, only to realize how futile it would be. How could he explain this to someone who wouldn't believe him? Instead, he turned to Maria. "What do we do now?" Maria shook, her head, her mind racing. "We don't have weapons. We don't have defenses. All we can do is watch." As the objects drew closer, their shapes became visible against the darkening sky. Enormous ships, sleek and metallic, hovered above major cities around the globe. News outlets erupted with reports of alien sightings, and social media went into a frenzy. People spilled into the streets, pointing upward in awe and terror. Some prayed, others ran for cover. Governments scrambled to respond, issuing statements meant to calm the public while secretly preparing military forces for an unknown threat. Jack felt a lump form in his throat as he watched. Footage of the ships broadcast live on TV. This wasn't what they'd hoped for. These weren't the peaceful allies described in the alien message. These were invaders, and they looked ready to conquer. The largest ship descended near Pine Ridge, hovering ominously over the fields where Jack's workshop stood. Its surface shimmered with an otherworldly glow, reflecting the moonlight like liquid silver. The ground trembled beneath its weight, and the air crackled with energy. Jack and the others stared through the warehouse windows. Frozen in place, then came the voice. It wasn't audible in the traditional sense. It resonated directly in their minds. Deep and guttural, vibrating with authority. "You are damned," it said, each word dripping with disdain. "Your existence is irrelevant." Karen gasped, clutching her head as if trying to block out the sound. "What's happening?" "They're communicating telepathically," Alex muttered, his jaw clenched. "Stay calm. Don't let them see fear," the voice continued, addressing not just the group but seemingly everyone on Earth. "We are the Krill. Your planet has been marked for cleansing. Resistance is futile." The word cleansing sent chills down their spines. These weren't explorers or diplomats, they were exterminators. The hunters from the alien message had arrived, and they saw humanity as nothing more than pests. Ryan stepped forward, his usual confidence replaced by anger. "Who gave you the right to decide our fate?" he demanded aloud, though he knew the Krill wouldn't answer. The ship emitted a low hum, and a beam of light shot down from its underside, scanning the area. Jack instinctively ducked behind a table, pulling Karen with him. "They're looking for something," he whispered. "Or someone." Maria nodded grimly. "Us. They must know we sent the message." Before anyone could respond, the beam shifted, focusing on the warehouse. The walls vibrated as the ship's systems analyzed the structure. Then, without warning, the light faded and the ship ascended back into the sky. "They're leaving," Alex said, relief washing over him for a moment. But the reprieve was short-lived. Moments later, smaller drones detached from the main vessel, swarming the town like insects. They zipped through the streets, firing beams of energy that reduced buildings to rubble. Screams echoed in the distance as people fled in terror. Pine Ridge, once quiet and unassuming, was now a war zone. Inside the warehouse, the group huddled together, trying to make sense of what was happening. "Why are they attacking?" Jack asked, his voice trembling. "We didn't do anything." "To them, they don't care," Alex replied bitterly. "To them, we're insignificant, like ants underfoot." Karen gripped her notebook tightly, tears streaming down her face. "This is our fault. If we hadn't sent that message..." "No." Maria interrupted firmly. "This isn't your fault. The Krill were already hunting those aliens." They would have found us eventually. At least now we know what we're up against. Ryan paced back and forth, his mind working furiously. We need to fight back. Can't just sit here and wait to die. But how? Jack asked. We don't have weapons. We don't have armies. What can we possibly do? Alex placed a hand on his shoulder. We use what we have. Intelligence. Creativity. Humanity's greatest strength has always been our ability to adapt. That's how we'll survive. As dawn broke, the attack subsided, leaving behind a trail of destruction. Smoke rose from smoldering ruins, and the streets were eerily silent. Survivors emerged cautiously, tending to the wounded and searching for loved ones. Among them were Jack, Karen, Alex, Maria, and Ryan, their faces streaked with soot and exhaustion, despite the devastation. A spark of determination burned within them. They had seen the Krill's power firsthand, but they also understood something crucial. The invaders underestimated them. To the Krill, humans were weak and unworthy of attention. But humanity had survived countless challenges throughout history: wars, plagues, natural disasters. This was no different. We need to warn the world, Karen said finally. Tell everyone what we know. Maybe together we can find a way to stop them. Alex nodded. And we need to keep working on decoding that message. If we can contact the aliens who sent the SOS, maybe they can help us fight back. Ryan smiled faintly. Let's show these Krill bastards that Earth isn't as helpless as they think. With renewed resolve, the group set out to spread their message. They knew the road ahead would be long and perilous. But they also knew one thing for certain. Humanity wasn't going down without a fight. Document. Part 2. The group met again in Karen's apartment, their makeshift headquarters. The room was cluttered with papers, laptops, and half-empty coffee cups. Everyone sat around the dining table, their faces tense but focused. The discovery of the alien message weighed heavily on them all. It wasn't just a scientific curiosity anymore, it was a responsibility, one that none of them had asked for but couldn't ignore. Karen opened her laptop and projected the decoded fragments of the message onto the wall. Here's what we know so far, she began, pointing to the screen. The signal is coming from deep space, probably hundreds or even thousands of light years away. The aliens who sent it are under attack, are being hunted by another species, one that's much stronger and more advanced. Maria leaned forward, her brow furrowed. Do we have any idea what these hunters are like? Are they machines? Creatures? Something else entirely? Karen shook her head. Not yet. The message doesn't describe them directly, but it does mention destruction, planets wiped out, civilizations erased. Whoever they are, they're dangerous. Alex crossed his arms, his military training kicking in. If they're that powerful, why haven't they found Earth already? Why didn't they intercept this message before it reached us? Jack frowned. Maybe they didn't expect anyone here to pick it up. Our technology isn't exactly top of a line compared to theirs. That's true, Karen said. And based on the coordinates in the message, I think the signal might have been misdirected. These aliens probably assumed no one in this part of the galaxy would hear them or care enough to respond. Maria nodded thoughtfully, so they were reaching out blindly, hoping someone would answer. And we did. But now what? Alex asked, his voice sharp. We can't just sit here and do nothing. If these hunters are as bad as the message says, they'll keep coming until there's nothing left. What happens if they find Earth? Shh. Room fell silent. No one wanted to say it aloud, but they all knew the truth. Humanity stood little chance against an enemy capable of wiping out entire planets. Earth's defenses, military's weapons, satellites would be useless against such overwhelming power. Karen broke the silence. We need to figure out who sent the message first. Maybe they can help us. If they survive this long, they must have some way of fighting back. Or running, Maria added grimly. Surviving doesn't always mean winning. Jack tapped his fingers nervously on the table. Even if we could talk to them, how do we send a reply? We don't have the equipment to broadcast a signal that far. We'll figure it out, Karen said firmly. We've got to try. We don't. We're leaving Earth completely unprepared. Over the next few days, the group worked tirelessly to refine their understanding of the message. Karen spent hours analyzing the language, piecing together fragments of grammar and syntax. She found patterns in the symbols, clues that hinted at emotions behind the word sphere: desperation, hope. Whoever had sent the message wasn't just asking for allies, they were begging for salvation. Meanwhile, Jack tinkered with his radio telescope, trying to boost its range. He knew it wasn't designed for two-way communication, but he refused to give up. "If I can amplify the signal enough," he told the others, "maybe we can bounce a reply off one of the nearby satellites." It's a long shot, but it's something. Alex focused on strategy. Using his knowledge of warfare, he sketched out plans for potential scenarios. "If these hunters come looking for us, we'll need every advantage we can get," he explained. "That means studying their tactics, finding weaknesses. Anything we can learn from the message will help." Maria took a different approach. She researched Earth's ecosystems, looking for parallels between humanity's survival instincts and those of other species. "Life finds a way," she said during one meeting. "Even in the harshest environments, organisms adapt. Maybe that's what these aliens did too. If we can understand how they survived, maybe we can do the same." Despite their efforts, doubts lingered. None of them were experts in extraterrestrial communication or interstellar travel. They were amateurs, ordinary people thrust into an extraordinary situation. Yet somehow that fact gave them courage. If they could make sense of the message, maybe others could too. Maybe humanity as a whole could rise to the challenge. One evening, as the group debated their next steps, Karen received an unexpected visitor. A man named Ryan Bennett knocked on her door, introducing himself as a tech entrepreneur, and well-dressed, with slicked-back hair and a confident smile. Ryan seemed out of place among the cluttered chaos of Karen's apartment. "I heard about your discovery," he said without preamble. "Alien signals, right? Fascinating stuff." Karen hesitated, unsure whether to trust him. "How did you hear about it?" Ryan chuckled. "Word gets around. Especially when someone hacks into university servers to access classified research files." He held up his hands defensively. "Don't worry, I'm not here to cause trouble. I want to help." Alex stepped forward, his tone cautious. "Help with what? Building a response?" Ryan replied. "You're clearly onto something. Big, but you're working with shoestring resources? Let me fund you. I'll provide whatever you need: better equipment, lab space, even a team of engineers if you want." The offer was tempting, but it came with risks. Trusting an outsider meant exposing their work to scrutiny and possibly exploitation. Still, Ryan's enthusiasm was genuine, and his wealth could accelerate their progress significantly. After a brief discussion, the group decided to accept his help. Ryan set them up in a rented warehouse on the outskirts of Boise, equipping it with state-of-the-art technology. For the first time, they felt like they were making real progress. As weeks turned into months, the team grew closer, united by their shared mission. They argued, laughed, and supported each other through late nights and setbacks. Each new breakthrough brought both excitement and anxiety. What if they made a mistake? What if their reply reached the wrong ears? Their fears, they pressed on. Karen refined the message further, incorporating elements of human language to make it easier for the aliens to understand. Jack tested various transmission methods, searching for the most efficient way to send their reply. Alex and Maria brainstormed contingency plans, preparing for every possible outcome. Finally, the day came when they were ready to transmit their response. Standing in the warehouse, surrounded by humming machines and blinking lights, the group gathered around the console. Jack placed his hand on the lever that would activate the signal. "Are we sure about this?" Maria asked quietly. No one answered. They all knew the risks, but they also knew they couldn't turn back now. With a deep breath, Jack flipped the switch. The signal surged outward, carrying humanity's first deliberate message to the stars. For a moment, the room was silent, the weight of what they'd done hanging in the air. Then Ryan clapped his hands together, breaking the tension. "Well, that's that. Now we wait." But waiting wouldn't be easy. Somewhere out there in The vast expanse of space, their message was traveling toward its destination. Whether it would reach the intended recipients or attract unwanted attention remained to be seen. For now, all they could do was hope. Hope that they'd made the right choice. Hope that Earth wasn't signing its own death warrant. And hope that, somewhere in the universe, someone was listening. Document. Part 1. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the Idaho sky in shades of orange and purple. The small town of Pine Ridge was quiet, its streets empty, as most residents retreated indoors for the evening. Out on the outskirts of town, where fields stretched endlessly and the hum of crickets filled the air, Jack Monroe sat alone in his backyard workshop. It wasn't much a converted shed with peeling paint and a roof that leaked during heavy rain, but to Jack, it was perfect. Inside, he had built himself a makeshift radio telescope using spare parts scavenged from old electronics and discarded satellite dishes. Jack wasn't an astronomer by trade. By day, he worked at the local hardware store, helping customers find nails or fix leaky faucets. But by night, he turned into something else entirely, an amateur stargazer, driven by curiosity about what lay beyond Earth's atmosphere. He loved the idea of listening to the universe, imagining all the secrets hidden in the static between stars. For years, he'd been scanning frequencies, hoping to catch something unusual. So far, all he'd picked up was background noise bits of distant radio waves, faint echoes of human transmissions bouncing off the moon, and the occasional burst of interference from passing planes. That night, however, things were different. As Jack adjusted the dials on his equipment, a strange signal crackled through the speakers. At first, he thought it was just more interference. Static was common out here, especially with power lines running nearby. But this sound was different. It had rhythm, almost like a pattern. Leaning closer, Jack fine-tuned the frequency until the signal became clearer. His heart began to race. It wasn't random noise. It was deliberate. The signal repeated itself every few minutes, pulsing steadily like a heartbeat. Each pulse carried complex sequences of tones and pauses too precise to be natural. Jack grabbed a notebook and started jotting down numbers, matching each tone to its duration. As he worked, his mind raced with possibilities. Was it some kind of code? A message meant for someone or something else? Hours passed before Jack finally leaned back in his chair, exhausted but exhilarated. What he'd recorded didn't match any known terrestrial transmission. It definitely wasn't man-made. Whatever this was, it came from deep space, somewhere far beyond the reach of Earth's technology. The next morning, Jack called Karen Lewis. They'd met a year ago at a science fair in Boise, where Karen had given a talk about linguistics and cryptography. Since then, they'd kept in touch, exchanging ideas whenever Jack stumbled upon something interesting in his late-night experiments. Karen lived in the city now, teaching at the university, but she always made time for Jack's discoveries, if most of them turned out to be false alarms. "Karen, you've got to see this," Jack said over the phone, his voice trembling with excitement. "I think I might have found, well, I don't even know how to describe it." Intrigued, Karen agreed to meet him later that day. She drove out to Pine Ridge, her car bumping along the dirt road leading to Jack's house. When she arrived, he greeted her with a grin, holding up the pages of notes he'd taken the previous night. Over coffee, he explained everything: the mysterious signal, the patterns. The hours spent decoding fragments of what seemed like coordinates. Karen listened intently, her brow furrowed in concentration. Unlike Jack, she approached the mystery methodically, analyzing each piece of data carefully. After poring over his notes for nearly an hour, she nodded slowly. "This isn't random," she said. "There's structure here, these tones there. Mathematical. Someone or something is trying to communicate." Over the next several days, Karen immersed herself in deciphering the signal. Back at her apartment in Boise, she spread Jack's notes across her dining table, cross-referencing them with research papers on extraterrestrial communication. Slowly, painstakingly, she began to unravel the message. The patterns weren't just numbers. They formed equations, geometric shapes, and eventually, words written in a language unlike anything she'd ever seen. One evening, After weeks of relentless effort, Karen finally broke through. The message wasn't just a string of symbols, it was a plea for help. Fragments of it described a species being hunted, pursued relentlessly by another more powerful race. There were mentions of planets destroyed, civilizations wiped out, and a desperate search for allies. Most chilling of all were the coordinates embedded within the signal. They pointed to a location in space, though Karen couldn't yet determine its exact destination. She called Jack immediately. "It's real," she told him, her voice shaking. "This is from aliens. They're asking for help." News of the discovery spread quickly among their small circle of friends. Alex Carter, a former military strategist who now worked as a researcher, joined the discussion, bringing a practical perspective to the table. Maria Lopez, a biologist specializing in extreme environments, offered insights into how alien life might adapt to survive such conditions. Together, they debated what to do next. Should they alert the authorities, share the information publicly, or keep it secret until they understood more? Alex argued for caution. "If word gets out, people will panic," he warned. "And if the wrong people get involved, governments, corporations, we could lose control of this entirely," Maria agreed. "We need to figure out who these aliens are first. Are they friendly? Hostile? We can't assume anything." In the end, they decided to keep the discovery private for now. But secrecy came with its own challenges. How could they respond to the message without revealing themselves? And what if the aliens' enemies intercepted their reply? As the group grappled with these questions, one thing became clear. Earth was no longer alone in the universe, whether humanity was ready or not. The cosmos had reached out, and it needed their help. Back in his workshop, Jack stared at the blinking lights of his radio telescope. The weight of what they'd uncovered pressed heavily on his shoulders. For so long, he dreamed of making contact with intelligent life beyond Earth. Now that it had happened, he felt both awe and fear. The signal hadn't been sent to Earth, specifically. It was a broadcast aimed at anyone who could hear it. Yet somehow, humanity had answered the call. What would happen next? Jack didn't know. But one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again.